Welcome to the solution video for Object-Oriented Programming Challenge 3. So let's start by just reading through the instructions. Create a function personFromPersonStore that takes as input a name and an age. When called, the function will create person objects using the object.create method on the personStore object. Alright, so just to recap, in challenge number 2 we created this personStore object which has as a property greet. Greet is a method, and all it does is it logs hello to the console. Now we're going to need to use that personStore object within our personFromPersonStore function. So we can see in the instructions that we're supposed to use the object.create function. So let's take a look at the docs for that. The place I always go is the MDN docs, great resource. So if we look at the top, we can see the object.create method creates a new object using an existing object to provide the newly created object's proto. So if you read the read section of the object-oriented programming unit, you'll know that this __proto __ thing is actually a reference to the object's prototype chain. So that means that if we add an object to the prototype chain of the object that we're creating. So for example, we add personStore to the prototype chain of our person object that we're trying to create. Person will have access to this greet method because it's part of its prototype chain. So let's read a little bit more about object.create. Scroll down to the syntax. The only actual required parameter is proto. So the object that we want to serve as the prototype chain. So in our example here, I'm thinking that we'll want to have personStore be that prototype chain for our person object. So let's just pseudocode a little bit. So I think the first thing we're going to do is declare a person object variable, and we're going to assign it to the output of object.create, and we're going to pass in personStore as the proto. After we've done that, we've got this person object. Let's go ahead and just add these name and age properties directly to our person object. So add name property to person, and we'll do the same thing with age. And finally, at the end of our function, we should just be returning our person object, which now has a name and an age property. It also has access through the prototype chain to the personStore's methods and properties, which in this case is just a greet method. So let's actually code this out. So I'm going to make this person object and assign it to the return value of object.create. And we're going to pass in personStore to serve as our proto, right? So personStore will be in the prototype chain of person. So let's also just add a name property to person. So we can just create this name property, and we want to set it equal to the name that gets passed in to our function. I'm going to do the same thing with age. And finally, we can just return our person object out of our personFromPersonStore function. So let's look at this example here on line 22. We have this object that we're calling Sandra, and it's going to be an object returned by the personFromPersonStore function. As our name parameter, we're passing in the argument Sandra, and as age, we're passing in the argument 26. So we would expect that if we just log Sandra.name and Sandra.age, we should see Sandra and 26. Let's check that out. And that is indeed what we do see. Finally, here's the real test. If we call Sandra.greet, we expect that we will be able to look in the prototype chain of Sandra for a greet property, and that we'll find it because personStore is part of Sandra's prototype chain. So we should log hello when we call Sandra.greet. Let's see, and we do. Finally, we can check and make sure that we are passing all tests here. Looks like we are. Perfect. So I hope you continue to code through these challenges, find out some new ways to create objects and access their prototype chain, and have a great day.